Hello, hi Gladys. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited for this one. It's our fifth episode. Can you believe it?
I know, and I'm so excited about because the podcast went live. We're pre-recording a little bit, so the podcast went live this week, and honestly, people have been so nice. My heart is so full.
I know. I know. I was so pleasantly surprised because it's all, with these things, it's always like, and we told each other as well, like, okay, we need to be prepared for like five. If we get like 10 people, it
I
will be really
know.
good already. And it was great. So many people listened and so many people messaged me. And also people who like of course my friends who know that they have to, but then also people who you wouldn't really expect. Like and it's very nice. It's lovely. So thank you to everyone who listened already and followed us.
Yeah, thank you. I actually am celebrating a little, and I think you are too. I have my glass of prosecco here.
Yeah.
Do you have a
I
little drink?
No, I was thinking about it, but no, I'm just doing sparkling water right
Oh
now.
well,
I
I
might,
I'm cheersing for both of us.
yes, please do. I'm thinking of, I might get a little fruit beer afterwards to celebrate.
Oh yeah, you
Yeah, this
should.
episode maybe. Yeah.
Cool. Should we maybe get into introducing the podcast?
Yes, let's do it because this will probably be a long one.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Welcome to Millennial Musings. I'm Gladys.
And I'm Isabella, and we are just two opinionated. Oh, we are just two opinionated millennials who sometimes make dumb mistakes. And what we want to do here is to share our experiences and offer the advice we wish we had received.
Little disclaimer, we are not therapists or life coaches, and we have no actual criteria to be giving advice whatsoever. But we could be your new bestie or your big sister. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee or a cold iced tea, depending on the weather, because it is summer, and get ready for some millennial musings.
Yes. In this podcast here, we focus on different themes and we try to answer 3 to 4 questions within those topics. And each question is one episode. So this episode is the second episode of our self-love and self-care theme. But this episode is a little bit different. This week and next week, we wanted to focus on topics that are very important to us. So we've picked one rather than both discussing the topic at the same time. So this week I will be asking Gladys questions, and next week we will be swapping roles and Gladys will be asking me questions.
Yes. So this week's episode is called Can You Love Your Body When It's Everyone's Worst Nightmare? Like I mentioned in the first episode, this is something that I'm very passionate about. And as someone who's always been big, I think I can say that I have some experience with the fat phobia, diet culture, etc. as well. So that's what we will be discussing in the next hour or so. I feel like I should also give a trigger warning because I will be discussing, of course, fat phobia, quite severe cases of fat phobia, and also disordered eating. So, if that is something that you're not really feeling today, then yeah, maybe just listen to it later or skip this one. Yeah, I think that's it. I think I'm ready. I'm a bit and also I will probably get a little bit heated. So
Keep track of your volume. You might
yeah,
want to
I
turn it
know.
down
Yeah.
every now and again.
So yeah, be prepared for that as well.
Oh, I am.
Okay, let's go.
Should I just start with the first question I've got for you to get
Y-
into the theme?
yes, please.
Yeah? Okay. So, when did you realize people saw your body as different?
So I actually have a very specific anecdote for for this one. So I remember I was in primary school and we had I don't really know how it's called in the UK, but we had these like medical checkups or something that you need to do every like year or every 2 years or something when you're in school. And we actually had this in like the kindergarten garden building of our school. So I remember we had to go there. So I must have been in primary school. I'm not 100% sure how old I was, but I must have been like 6 or 7 maybe. So we went there, and then they like take your height, they take your weight. And I remember I left that office, so like the person who did all this, the nurse's office or whatever. And I was kind of waiting for the rest of my class to be done, and so that we could go back to our classroom. And a couple of boys came up to me, so like four or five boys or something, and they asked me what my weight was. And I told them the number because in that moment, like, I did not think there was anything wrong with this. So I was very, I was a very innocent child. So I was like, oh yeah, it's this. And they all, like, they gasped. Some of them started making gagging noises, and they all just were absolutely disgusted. And that was kind of the first that I distinctly remember this as like the first moment when I realized,
This is horrendous.
yeah. So that was the first moment where I was like, oh, is that weird? Like, is there something wrong with that number? And then also, of course, the fact that they asked me, so they already must have, looked at me and saw something different because they felt the need to ask me this. So yeah, and then from then on, it was just these things in school. Children are horrible. We all know this. It was like it was mainly the boys in my class. They didn't want to work with me, or like they didn't want my stuff to touch their stuff. Like, it was,
What the fuck?
yeah, like it was.
Of course it was men. I mean,
Yeah.
boys. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I want to know where they are now, really.
I know. It was, yeah. So they all acted like it was contagious or something. So yeah, I don't know. In primary school, it was quite bad, actually. I didn't have that many friends, and the boys were quite horrible. And then I also remember this one time a boy had been screaming at me and calling me all these names, and I went home crying, and to my grandmother, because like she lived across the road, and my mum was there as well. And I remember her literally saying something like, well, of course this is happening, like, what did you expect, or something.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that was not the best.
Well, I'm sorry that happened to you as a child as well, when you don't really understand what's going on at all.
I know, it's, yeah, as a child, it leaves, it leaves scars, of course, when these things happen. Yeah.
And I guess, well, my second question kind of is going along with what you just said, but in general, outside of like being a child as well, what was it like growing up as a big person for you?
It was, it's weird because I've actually always loved myself, and I realize that that's a luxury, but I never thought I was ugly. I was just very painfully aware that everyone else thought I was ugly. So, yeah.
Sorry, that reminds me of when, I mean, I've seen a few memes as well about it, but like, if someone says, oh, I feel so fat, and then people are like, no, don't worry, you're beautiful, and it's like, I didn't say I was ugly.
Yes, no, exactly. But yeah, of course, people use the word fat and ugly as kind of like the same thing, which we'll definitely get into later. But yeah, growing up for me, I don't know, it was weird because I always had this confidence, but I also noticed that people found it weird that I had this confidence. I remember my PE teacher telling me, you're actually like, you seem quite confident in yourself, and like you seem to really like yourself and your body. And she said it like she could barely believe. She almost said it as like, why? Like, where do you get the audacity to be that confident? But then, of course, there were also, like I said, I was very aware of how everyone else saw me. So actually, Lizzo said in an interview once that she would like grab her thighs and her stomach, and she would think about actually going into the kitchen, grabbing a knife and cutting all of it off. And I started sobbing when I heard that interview, because I spent years like that, just like lying in my bed, fantasizing about like being able to do that, which yeah, which is horrible.
Very sad and horrible.
And then also of course a big thing. This was the noughties, you know. Paris Hilton and Lindsay Lohan were the it girls.
The
Magazines had
heroin chic, you mean?
Yes, yeah, heroin chic was still definitely a thing. Magazines had these like worst beach bodies sections where thin people like Jennifer Aniston or something had these red circles around their hips and their bellies. And then next to it was something like, is she pregnant, or did she just eat too much today? Or it was that kind of stuff that we grew up with. And then TV shows like Gossip Girl, and later on like Pretty Little Liars, all these things, they had these very glamorous and unrealistically thin and good looking people on it. And also I remember Gossip Girl glamorizing bulimia, because there's the
Oh
character of
yeah.
Blair who like purges a couple of times and then it's never discussed again. And it was just these things where it was, yeah. So I definitely that played a very big part in my teenage years. And I would like cut out all these beach bodies of like women who did look good according to these magazines, and then I would like put them up in or have them in my wallet or something to use as like motivation or whatever. And then yeah, and then on two occasions, well, there were two times where I lost quite a lot of weight. It was like over 30 kilograms each time, which is a lot. I don't know how much. Yeah,
Wow,
I don't.
that is a lot.
That's a lot. I don't know. I don't know how much that is in stone or whatever. We don't do that in Europe, but yeah, it was quite a lot of weight. But I wasn't eating. Like I would eat like one slice of bread or something a day. Or then I would eat like my mum would cook and I would eat normally, but then I knew that I couldn't, like I had to skip a couple of meals the next day, and or I would go to sleep because then I would be less, or I could skip a couple of hours where I would be hungry or something.
Oh my
Um
god.
yeah, so it was I'm
What
actually
time frame was that though? Like in what time frame did you lose
I
the
th-
30 kilograms?
it was yeah, it must have been about 15 or 16.
No, I mean like was it you lost 30 kilograms
Oh,
in a
yes, sorry,
month?
sorry. Oh yes, it was very, yeah. It all happened. It happened in a couple of months.
Oh my god.
It was not healthy. I lost I lost a lot of weight. Almost every day or every week. Um and I think I weighed myself about 50 times a day, and it would drive me, like if I would have a sip of water and and then I would step on the scale and see that I had gained weight or something, and then that would freak me out. It was very, very bad. It maybe wasn't a full-blown eating disorder, but I was definitely on the way to developing one. So I'm actually very lucky that that didn't happen, but it was very definitely disordered eating. And also I've never been more miserable in my life. Like there was a couple of times where I fainted because I was so hungry. But but the compliments, everyone would tell me how good I looked and how happy I must be because I lost all that weight and I looked so much better and everything. And then of course inevitably I gained all that weight back because yeah, those things are never meant to to last, because
Well, it's
they're
not sustainable.
no,
Yeah.
people aren't meant to lose weight like that, or to restrict their, or to put all these limits on like their food intake or whatever. And so I gained all the weight back, and I was actually happier and healthier, but everyone saw, like mainly my family as well, saw this as me failing. And then they were all like, for like years afterwards, they were like, "Oh, but come on, like you did it before. We saw you did it. You looked so good. Why can't you not do it again?" And it's so fucked up, because like it was the worst I've ever felt and the unhealthiest I've ever been.
Yeah, you were suffering the most you've ever suffered, probably physically
Yes.
and mentally. And then
Yeah.
you've been told this is the best you are right now.
Exactly, exactly. And then also just, throughout my, well, actually until quite recently, like until a couple of years ago, I would wear blazers or jackets in like 35-degree weather because I just didn't want people to see my arms. My legs didn't see sunlight for years, and like I would meet up with a friend and they would be like in a skirt or a dress, and I remember thinking, "Oh, it must be so nice to be able to do that." But of course, I can't. Like that's just not for me. And so I would be wearing black jeans because in my mind that would be slimming or whatever. Um yeah, and it's interesting because a couple years ago, I found this list of reasons to lose weight that I had in my wallet as a teenager.
Did you write that?
Yes, yeah. So I wrote this to like look at it as again motivation. Um, and the main thing I realized was none of these reasons had anything to do with me and how I felt. It was all things like you will fit into nice clothing, boys will like you, people will stop bullying you. It was all these reasons that, or like you won't be ashamed to wear a bathing suit anymore, but it was all these reasons that had to do with how people treated me and nothing had to do with how I felt inside. So that was very interesting for me to
Yeah.
see that, knowing what I
Well,
know now. Yeah.
yeah, well, I'm glad you wear whatever the fuck you want to wear, because I have to tell you all, whenever I meet up with Gladys, anywhere, doesn't matter where, in London, when we were in Bali, it doesn't matter where we go, this woman gets compliments like no one else. There's always someone else coming up to her and says, "Oh my god, this dress, oh my god, this jacket, oh my god." Like, go for it, because you obviously would be missing out. We would all be missing out on some looks if you wouldn't have
Oh
got
my
to the step
oh
of
my
like,
god.
fuck everyone.
Oh my god. I'm getting a bit emotional already. That's so sweet. Thank you.
um yeah, so you mentioned that your mom said when you came home from school that she was like, obviously that's happening. So how did your family treat you in general when it comes to gaining weight or losing weight or your weight in general?
Not the best. Not the best. Um yeah, it would be I don't know, they would make these comments at very random times, like we would be having dinner and all of a sudden someone would go, "Hey, so when are you planning on losing weight?" And then I don't know, it would be also, of course, embarrassing, as a young person or as a child if somebody does that to you, especially in public. Um yeah, my father said things like I would never get a boyfriend or I would never get a job because men don't like fat women. People don't hire fat people, things like this. And it was, of course, always under this cover of like it's concerns for me, like they're concerned for my health or whatever. But then it's it's so sad because, for example, we would go to the beach, and like I said, I would be scared to wear a bathing suit because I didn't want my family to comment on it. But then they took me not wearing a bathing suit as you must hate your body because you're fat. So they didn't realize I'm doing this because you guys are literally saying things that are hurtful and you guys are bullying me really. Um so yeah, it would get quite bad sometimes, and it's I don't know, it's weird because sometimes I talk to, other people who grew up fat or bigger or whatever, and their families, well, they would sometimes make these comments, but I don't know, with me it was, I mean, um one of my parents at one time, so I lived in Berlin for a year, and when I left, when I moved there, one of my parents told me that if I hadn't lost weight after a year, I didn't need to bother coming home because they didn't want to deal with that anymore. And then another parent told me that people looked at me in the street and how it was embarrassing to them. And
Excuse me.
yes, and it's honestly, I wish I was making this up, but yeah, and it's like it's almost funny. Well, it's not, but people tell you that they're concerned and they don't want you. They're doing this and they're telling you this because they don't want you to get treated horribly. But they are by far the ones who have said the most cruel things to me. So I think that would also be the thing that I would say to other people is like, don't be your child's biggest bully. When it comes to like anything. You can be the person who supports them from the beginning and is nice to them and is kind to them and is lifting them up, and they will remember this. Or you can be the person who is your biggest, who is your child's biggest bully, and they'll remember that as well. Actually, the one person, and I should give him a shout out, the one person in my family who never, ever, ever, well, actually, no, two people who never said anything was my aunt, and then also my grandfather. My grandfather, for as long as I've known him, has always been fat. And this man is so confident. And he was always very confident. And he would call himself fat and not like think twice about it, or he would not make a big deal about it. And he would also just be like, yeah, that's just what we are. Like, I'm fat, you are fat. And of course I would see that as I would find it horribly embarrassing when he would say that. But yeah, and thinking about this now, he was just so good about it. Like, to him it was just like, that's just what we are, that's literally just it. And he would just talk about himself that way as well, about him like going to the doctors and they telling him that he was obese, that word. And he would kind of like make jokes and everything, and I remember as a young person being like, oh my god, how embarrassing, like, why is he saying this to people? Is he not embarrassed? But no, he wasn't embarrassed. And yeah, I don't know, thinking about this now, it was actually the one person who was just normal about it. So yeah.
Well, I'm really glad that there were at least two people in your family who really just loved you for who you are and didn't give a fuck about everything else.
Yeah, me too.
Where do you think this fat phobia comes from? Like, in general, not just within your family, but like just the general fat phobia that we're living with.
Yeah, so that's something, when I have these conversations with people, that's something that they sometimes ask or say, is like, but when did this shift happen? Because we know that centuries ago, fat people were considered wealthy people, and the richest people had to be fat. And then of course there was Rubens, who is very famous for drawing fat people, or fat people. And then even statues of Greek goddesses have back rolls and everything. So there is that thing of like, when did that ideal change? And I think, and I mean, there's people who can explain this much more eloquently than me. But basically it all kind of comes down to this Western idea of beauty, of course, right? But because when you go to for example, the continent of Africa has a very different idea of what an ideal woman looks like. And they have these ideals as well that maybe also aren't the best, because they also exclude other like body types. You want to say something?
Yeah, it's true with the African culture, because I remember, I think I was like 19 or something. So my mind as well was very different about what the word fat means. And I met my dad's cousin, who is a guy from Africa. And he looked at me and he was like, "Oh, Isabella, you look great. Your cheeks are getting fatter." And I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Literally while I was eating a piece of pizza. And I was like, okay, I guess, thank you, or whatever that means.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a completely different culture, isn't it?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because of course to you, I'm guessing in that moment, it was like your worst nightmare. Somebody saying
my brain
that.
was like, do I need to work out right now and drop this pizza?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my best friend is a fat woman. Her dad's Nigerian. Her mum is Dutch. Her mum is a very thin woman. And so in Belgium, where they live, my friend is considered, ugly because she's fat, or, unhealthy, undesirable, all the things that fat people are called. And then in Nigeria, they literally make fun of her mum. They're like, oh my god, we can't believe that somebody who looks like this gave birth to a real woman, which also is not the best either. No. But it's just it's so interesting how, and this is something people need to realize, at the end of the day, we're literally treating bodies, and specifically female bodies, as a fashion trend. And everything depends on time and place. And it's so sad that we're destroying our bodies or living these unhappy lives because of something that is just that's nothing more than than a fashion
I
trend.
mean, the Kardashians are the biggest example for body types being a fashion trend, because there was a
Yeah.
time where they still all have their big bums, but I do watch the Kardashians, but like there was this trend. They were very curvy, very big bums and whatever. But now, if you watch the new season, they've all lost so much weight after the whole. There were so many articles saying heroin chic is coming back, or like the K-pop style of like being flat and really skinny. And I'm just like, can we just fucking leave bodies just the way they grow and are, and not make them into, I don't know, a new, like you said, fashion trend?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, but so to also answer your
Yeah.
your question, so did this happen and where does fat phobia come from? It's colonialism. So, and again, I'm not the best person to be explaining this, but I will recommend a book that does a great job of it. But basically, imperialists saw very small elite groups of people in Africa and in Asia, and they made these generalizations based on that. So they started looking at these bigger bodies and they kind of made this generalization of like, oh, they're lazy and unhealthy. And then, of course, what they thought in their minds was we, white people, are cultured and we are better. So we need to like we do have limits, we do have self-control, which is what makes us the superior race. Of course, I'm not saying this. I'm
Yeah.
paraphrasing
Yeah.
the yeah how this came about. So yeah, we do have self-control, so we can watch what we eat because we do have that self-discipline, and that's kind of where this came from, like put in very 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 simple terms, because of
That is
course there's a
so
lot more to
interesting
this.
though, because I've never heard this
Yeah.
before. I haven't looked into this,
No.
and this is so interesting how fat phobia is kind of also just related to racism.
Yes, yeah, I know, it's something that I wasn't aware of until a couple of years ago as well. So yeah. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Hmm.
Um,
So oh yeah, the book I
yeah.
do want to mention the book. I'll mention it later as well, but it's called Fear. Wait, I have it here. I wanted to show it. This is a podcast. Why do I think people can see me? Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia by Sabrina Strings. This is, yeah, it's really, really, really good.
I will definitely
She
put
kind
that on
of,
my reading list. It sounds very
yeah,
interesting.
she dives into like, to all of this. Yeah. And then of course I do kind of think that that diet culture as we know it today probably got, I don't know. I think it gained a lot of popularity in the 1950s, probably. When you when you see these like old ads or these like newspaper like how the perfect housewife needs to be and what they need to look
Oh, did
like.
you
And
see the Vogue advice from like the 50s or 40s or something on what
yeah,
you should eat? Like have a glass of white wine at like, I don't know, 9 a.m., then have a boiled egg, and then for lunch, I don't even know. Was it just wine and then some coffee maybe at some point, and then like a piece of red meat? Like, what the fuck?
I know. Yes, yeah, I know.
Just sounds like a night out for some people, I guess.
It does.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess my next question would be, um, how did you find dating as a fat person? Did you have like any weird experiences? Is there any like yeah, tell us about it.
Okay. So dating was an interesting one for me because I I think when I was younger it was very much this idea of like when I would like people, specifically people who weren't fat, there's this very messed up idea that when you like someone as a fat person, the other person would automatically have to settle for you because you're fat, and so that makes you the least attractive of the two, which is interesting because also looking back at this now, these men were trash. trash. So I don't even know why, but I liked them in the first place. But anyway, and I think some of these people, well, I know that some of these people I liked didn't feel the same way because of that, because I was fat. Which of course, again, looking back at this now, it's a good thing that
Oh,
that
yeah.
nothing ever came of that. But then and then, dating, online dating, for example, is an interesting one as well, because it's like, that many people are not interested in you or won't swipe for you or whatever because you're fat. And then the people that do sometimes have a little bit of a fetish. So I've received messages from people who are like, "Oh, I've never dated a fat girl," or like my absolute favorite to this day is well, fat chicks give the best blowjobs.
Huh?
Yeah.
Oh my
I
God.
know. I don't know how he got that, like, those statistics, but okay. But yeah, and I mean, the thing with me was, because I've heard horrible stories from people who like would go on dates and then halfway through the date, the person, usually men, would tell them, "I'm sorry, I can't get over this. Like, I didn't expect you to be this fat." And then that would be the end of the date. I've also read stories of people who went on a date with someone and then it turned out that the guys did it as a bet.
Oh my
Um,
God. This is
yeah,
horrendous. How many trash people are out there? Fucking
I
wet
know.
lettuce people.
I know. I know. So that was a thing for me that I always, when I started creating like dating profiles and everything, I kind of felt like I wanted to have that on my profile. So I had something like, "One thing you should know about me, I'm fat," on Hinge, for example. And then people kind of, in a weird way, felt like they needed to comment on this or like confirm
React
or
to it.
deny this. Yeah. So then I got messages that were like, "No, you're not. You're beautiful." Again, yeah, like you said, I didn't say I wasn't beautiful. or like, "No, I think, you're maybe just chubby or curvy." And it's like, "No, I'm fat. I'm fat. It's literally just a fact." Like, why are you, I don't need you to confirm this, or I don't need you to comment on this. It's just a fact. Um, and then, of course, there's again, growing up, like, you turn on the telly and there's fucking Monica and Chandler making fun of how
Oh,
he never would have
yeah.
dated her if she was still fat. Also, can we talk about how they refer to this woman as if she was some kind of monster? She wasn't even that fat.
You mean Monica in her flashback?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know,
She was,
honestly.
yeah.
That is the one part about Friends where I'm probably like, oh, I didn't age well, but then, yeah.
I know, yeah. Or then there's that Sex and the City episode where Samantha gained weight and they're
Oh
all
my
so
God.
shocked.
And she just still looks like like, I mean, she has a belly and that's the only difference to before. Like, her stomach isn't flat and that's the difference. And they're like,
Yeah,
ooh,
exactly.
what's going on?
Exactly, yes. Yeah, and then, also that reminds me of this very this anecdote. So do you know the movie A Cinderella Story with Michael Murray and Hilary Duff?
Yes.
So in that film, they do this thing where like she's unrecognizable because she's wearing a mask that covers her eyes, and they're doing this like 20 question thing, and he asks her, would you choose a salad or a burger? And she goes, "Oh, a burger." And then he tells his mates the next day, like, "Oh my God," and she eats like a normal person. And I remember, I was young, like I was a teenager. I remember thinking, but I eat burgers as well. I would choose the burger. Why do the Michael Murrays of my hometown not like me? Of course, what they didn't say in that film was, yeah, we want girls who eat, but also we want them to still be very thin.
Yeah.
Which was a shocking realization for me then, when I realized, oh, yeah, no, Michael Murray probably wouldn't go for me. So
Oh God.
so it's funny how, because then there's also that scene where like the mean girl asks for something that has like no carbs and no sugar or whatever, and Hillary goes, "We have water," and then it's like they make fun of this, but then still the ideal is still very much to like, I don't know, it's weird because they make fun of that behavior, but then at the same time the ideal is still very much to look very thin. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Yeah, okay. So in that relation, what do you wish people just would stop saying that's like related to fat phobia?
oh my god, what do I not wish people would stop saying? The first thing, I feel fat. Stop saying that. Stop saying you feel fat as a thin person. You can't feel fat as a thin person. Being fat is a body type. You're either thin or you're fat. Um yeah, that is something that I just hear time and time and time again. And of course, it's never used in a positive way. It's always used in a, oh, I feel ugly. I feel bloated. I feel whatever. But that's not the same thing as being fat.
I do have to say, obviously said that many times in my life, I'm pretty sure. But I actively try to change it too. I don't know where I heard it the first time. It was even before I met you and we actually had conversations about this. Sorry. But like, I actively changed this too because it is, like you said, I don't feel fat. What I'm feeling is I had a shit ton of food and my stomach now hurts. And that is not
Yeah.
like, that is just
Mhm.
me feeling a bit unwell because I overeaten again or whatever.
Yes.
And people need to understand that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And of course, to fat people, like people who actually are fat, of course, that's just another confirmation
Yeah.
that you hate the thought of looking like them. So that's the main thing I think because it's just so incredibly like you just hear it every single day. um then there's also the thing that I've heard some people say to my face as well was, "Oh, you look great, but me personally, I just prefer it when I'm thin." And it's kind of like, okay. But then at the end of the day, again, what you're saying is, I like, no, no, you're fine. And I don't think of you as like ugly or whatever. I think you look great. But for me personally, it's just the worst thing that could happen to me is to gain weight, which then makes me think that you probably don't look at me and think I feel fine. I look fine. I think you probably look at me and think, oh, let's avoid this. So yeah, that's another thing. Um, then also a big one that I hear time and time again when I say these things is when you kind of when you're telling people about your experiences and about fat phobia and they say, well, everyone has an opinion. Everyone always has something to say. Yes, but they sure as hell have a lot more to say when you're fat. And by doing that, you're invalidating the very real experience of being discriminated against and being hated for the way you look. So no, like people in fat bodies do get treated horribly. And I feel like by saying that, you're just acting like, oh well, no, like get over it because everyone has insecurities or that's yeah, that's something that's related to that as well. The thing of like, oh, but everyone feels bad about their bodies sometimes, or everyone has these insecurities sometimes.
Well, I do remember you telling me that, and I think that was also some kind of whoa, like aha moment for me. Was like when you said you went to a festival or something and people just kept yelling horrendous shit at you. Where I'm like, well, that obviously proves that yeah, everyone might have insecurities, but not everyone constantly has to hear shit from other people just because they literally enter a space.
Yes, yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
Very much that. Yeah. And then also, yeah, the last one is I don't think of you as fat. And that is something that I've heard many times as well. And to be very honest, years ago, actually for the first, I don't know, 25 years of my life, that would have been the biggest compliment because the thought of being considered fat or being called fat, that used to be my biggest nightmare. Like I would have preferred it if you, I don't know, beat me up, or if you like, I don't know, if I would have rather given my left arm away than being called fat by people. So but that was, of course, because I was terrified of being fat myself. But now I think, first of all, the I don't think of you as fat thing is bullshit. I clearly am fat. I think everyone can see that, and you do think of me as fat as well, because I am. So saying you don't is kind of saying, it's still, first of all, it's still applying that it's bad to be fat. And then also what you're basically saying is, I like you, so I want to respect you as a person, which is why I want to think of you separately from fat people in general, so I can still hate fat bodies and I can still have these ideas and this prejudice towards fat people, but I can also respect you as an individual. And I don't stand for that anymore. And like I said, it's very, very bad that I used to. I also, oh my God, I was the first person to laugh when people made fat phobic jokes about other people, because it wasn't me, it wasn't targeted towards me. And I felt like, oh, if they're doing this with me here, then it must mean that they don't think of me as fat. So that's so good. And I would literally, like, um, I would laugh and I would make fun of it as well. And it's something that I'm very ashamed of now, because it's despicable. But in that moment, I was just so terrified of being considered fat. So I was like, oh, if people are commenting on other people's bodies with me in the room, then they probably don't think of me that way, which is not true, because the second you then, I don't know, have any sort of argument with somebody, you'd be surprised how quickly they think of you as fat, because it is the number one insult and it comes so easily to people. So yeah, they don't think of you as fat as long as they like you. That's basically what that comes down to.
So, do you feel like people sometimes say things that is actually insulting to you, but they actually don't think it is because they're just saying it about themselves or like their own bodies?
Um well, so I get that everyone has their own struggles and their own personal journey, because of course diet culture and these very unrealistic beauty ideals are not just, not just fat people are victims of this. Everyone is struggling with that. So I completely understand how people who are thin and who've never had to deal with fat phobia, they might still have these issues, or they might still have these insecurities, 100%. Um, but at the end of the day, when people are making these comments like, oh, I feel so fat, or oh my God, I've gained weight, or oh, I haven't eaten in a couple of days because we're going to a restaurant later and I want to enjoy this, or whatever. It's like, what you're saying is, and people might deny this, but yeah, what they're saying is, you hate the idea of looking like me so much that you're willing to deny your body one of its most basic needs, which is food, because you don't want to look like me. And this behavior and these kinds of comments are so incredibly normalized in this society that we're almost kind of applauding them when people are saying something like, oh, I'm being good, I'm just having, I don't know, an olive for lunch or something. People are like, oh my God, oh, you're doing so well, And it's like, how is that normal? How is that behavior normal? At the end of the day, it's disordered eating as well. And why are we just acting like, yeah, like that's a normal thing to do? And then yeah, there is the thing of like, when people make these comments that do offend me, or maybe not offend me as much as just me being like, I don't need this, I don't need this, I don't know, at work to hear these things, or I don't need this, I don't need friends to tell me this, or I don't need family to make these comments. Then what people do sometimes say, like you said, is, oh, but it's their own personal issue, like they're going through something and you shouldn't be offended. But I am over fat people always having to be understanding, and fat people always, like, I get that people are struggling, but I'm sick and tired of that always having to be at the expense of fat people. And we need to understand, that it's not about us. And we need to understand that it's not okay. Good example, that Taylor Swift anti-hero video. And of course, I love Taylor. I would murder everyone for Eras Tour tickets. Do not get me wrong. But, she had, so for people who don't know, she had the anti-hero video, and there's a moment where she steps on a scale and the scale says fat in like big letters, and then she looks absolutely like ashamed. And then it was this whole thing. Then they ended up cutting that scene from the video, and there was this whole thing where people were like, yeah, but Taylor struggled with an eating disorder, and she mentioned this, and she has addressed this many times, and so why do people make this about them? And I get that, and I completely understand that. I'm not saying that's not valid. Like people's, you don't have to be fat to struggle with these things. 100%. You can be a very thin person like Taylor Swift and still struggle with those things. I'm not saying that's less valid. I'm not saying they can't share their experiences at all whatsoever. What I am saying is, again, what they're doing is giving that definition to the word fat, that it's something bad and horrible and something to avoid. And when somebody like Taylor Swift does it, who's a white, thin woman who, like, in no shape or form could ever be considered fat, again, to people who actually are fat, it's that confirmation of like, oh yeah, of course. Even someone like her is terrified of looking like me. And that's her biggest nightmare, is looking like me. And I don't care how often people say that's not the case, but that is the case. That's how many people, and that's how many people feel. That's how many thin people feel. Many thin people don't want to be fat. And I get why. Because like it's not great the way you get treated by society. But those kinds of things, like that video, and this might be a hot take, but this would not be so widely accepted if it was any other form of discrimination. It's fat phobia, and I think it was Jamila Jamil who said this, but fat phobia is a form of discrimination that is still so widely accepted because it has that thing of like, oh, but we need to be sensitive around this, and it's like people's own struggles, and it has to do with health and all of that. But no, at the end of the day, it's hatred for fat bodies.
Yeah, because what does it hurt me if someone else is fat? Like, why are people even so interested into being like this towards someone who is fat? Like, what does it bother you?
Yeah.
Like, that is the only question I have to ask. I ask myself, it's like, what has this to do with you?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess you can ask yourself that for every kind of hate towards people.
I mean,
what does it do to you? I don't know.
Yeah.
What does it do to people if their neighbors are two men and they're married? I don't know. I
don't know. It's just like, yeah. But I have actually a question regarding this Taylor video. So, just out of interest, because you said, obviously, the scale, blah, blah, it said fat. What would you think the scene in general shouldn't be in there? Or for you, if the scale would have said, I don't know, not good enough, would it have been something different? What do you think? If
for me, that would have been different.
Yeah, because it is the connotation with the word fat.
Yes. Yes, for me, definitely. Because I think, like I said, for me, it's very okay and very valid for somebody to share their experiences as well. And yeah, I think for me it was just, and I remember I was in Disneyland Paris, and I was in the queue for one of the attractions, and that video came out, and I was like, oh my god, because I loved the song already. I'd like been listening to the song for a couple hours because it wasn't even out that long, and I loved that song, and so that video came out, and I was so excited, and I wanted to watch it immediately, and my heart just, like, my stomach dropped when I saw that bit, because it was like, oh, yeah, of course. That's the thing. It's just it's every time it's just kind of a confirmation of like, oh, yeah, of course, being fat is still something that people consider a very bad thing and something to be avoided. So yeah. And I mean, that still would have been the case if the word fat wouldn't have been in that scene, but then I don't know. It wouldn't have upset me the same way, I think.
Yeah, it probably, like, everyone often does not feel good enough in different ways. So at least it would have a bit of a different connotation to it,
Yeah.
I guess. But so during this whole conversation we've had so far, you actively used the word fat. But there are like, I assume, still a lot of people out there that are afraid to use it. Why do you think that is?
Yes. So I call myself fat because that's what I am. Like I said, being called fat used to be my biggest nightmare. And of course, it's because we have learned that the word is an insult. So people shouldn't say it. Sorry, I had to burp. So Oh, yes. So what I get a lot from people is like when I'm having a conversation with someone and I'm calling myself fat or I'm saying, fat people in general. And then those people, like the thin person I'll be having a conversation with will be like, okay, so people who are like, to use the word that you're using, as you put it, fat. And it's so obvious that they're not comfortable saying it because they're like, can I use this now because she used it, but can I say this, but maybe if I quote her then maybe it's not that bad and maybe then I'm like safe. And I get it. I completely get it because yes, it's considered a bad thing. I would also say, as much as I'm okay with this, I would be careful with calling fat people fat because they might still not be okay with that, which is very
Yeah.
normal as well
Depends how
because
far along they are in their process, I
yes,
would assume as well. Like,
exactly.
yeah.
Because so you might mean it with like the best intention and the best intentions and just use the word fat as like a description of somebody, but they might still see it as an insult and something very bad, which is the way I used to see it as well. Um so yeah, but I think we need to stop thinking of it as an insult. Why is thin or skinny not an insult and why is fat an insult? Like yeah, I mean, we know why, but yeah. So
Yeah. So would you now, as a 30-year-old confident woman, how do you notice fat phobia in your everyday life at this point?
so well, first of all, there's just diet talk that's everywhere. It's on the telly, it's at work, it's the thing is it's not often or it's not usually very overt like expressions of hatred towards fat bodies. It's not that people come up to me every day and say, "Wow, you're an ugly fat bitch." Like that doesn't it has happened. It's happened. But it doesn't happen on a daily basis. What does happen on a daily basis is more subtle things like, "Oh, you look so good. Have you lost weight?" Or yeah, like we discussed, comments about their own bodies that just prove to me that the thought of looking like me is horrible to them. Or something like, I remember I was having lunch with two people who were very thin, and we ordered coffee and there was like a little biscuit that came with it. And then they were saying something like, "Oh, let's not eat that biscuit now because it makes you fat." And I was there like, why would you say that when I'm like, why would you say that in the first place? Also, why would you say that with me here? Because again, that's saying, oh my God, the thought of being fat or gaining weight, terrible, you know? Um, and then when I addressed it later, they said they said that I should take it as a compliment because they didn't think about me when they said it, and that was a good thing.
So
And
that's so you're going basically back to what you said before when people are like, "Oh, I don't see you as fat."
yes, yes. And
Mm.
what I would say to that as well is one, that's so messed up because
Oh yeah.
again, that implies that it is bad to be fat and that I should take it as a compliment that they don't look at me that way. Um and then two, you shouldn't say these things anyway because and that's the thing as well. People need to realize that yes, I'm quite vocal about this now and I do get, triggered by these things or offended or call it what you want. But you never know what somebody else is going through. And you might be in a group with only thin people, and somebody might really be struggling with something. And then you making a comment that you think is so innocent might really send them towards a bad place or might make them feel really bad. you don't know. Like I said, everyone struggles with this. It doesn't matter what your size is. Diet culture, fat phobia comes for everyone. So, I mean, yeah, fat people get discriminated against, but yes, you should be careful with the things you say, because you might be a thin person who's recovering from an eating disorder, for example, and then somebody's making that comment, and it might make you feel like, oh, should I not, like, maybe I should not eat this, or maybe just don't do it. Just don't say these things, you know? Um Now with my friends and family, I'm less worried about friends saying anything, because I'm very vocal about it, like I said. And I think that my friends, although most of them are thin, they do try to understand. Also, at this point in my life, I don't think I could be close friends with someone who is still very much in that diet culture. I think it would just be too triggering.
Oh
Um
yeah.
yeah, but then what used to be a really big thing for me is that shame almost, and the constantly having to be prepared for someone to say something. So I would be with friends, or I would be friends with somebody, and yeah, like I said, we had an agreement or a falling out, and then it would come out, and then that kind of showed that, like, that's how they felt about me the whole time. Or when what I felt like a lot of the time was like when you trust someone and you've completely let your guard down, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they would say something like that. And that's the most painful, I think. I was having dinner with someone, and I was eating, like what you said, I was eating as well, and they said something like, it would be better, or you would look better or something, if you lost weight. And this was someone I trusted so much in that moment, and I don't think I've ever felt more small in my life. And honestly, I just wanted to go home, vomit, and not eat for weeks. Um and the worst thing is when these things happen, or I would be like, I remember I was going to a concert, to like a festival, and it was very hot. And I had been hyping myself up all week to wear a tank top and to have my arms out. And I got in the car. My brother took one look at me and went, "Wow, your arms are massive."
What?
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He regrets that now. But
Oh, I can imagine. And you will have
yes.
made him regret that as well.
Oh yes, oh yes. But the worst thing in these moments is the embarrassment, because I really used to feel like, oh, I shouldn't have let go like this. Why did I even think I could do this? Why did I think I could wear this tank top and get away with it? I shouldn't have sat there and ate all that food, and I should have known that it would have happened and that somebody would say something. And then I would, for example, for family gatherings or something, I would be like, oh, okay, so I had my arms out, I got comments, so clearly that doesn't work. So next time I'll wear something that covers my arms. Oh, I was wearing a pink top and I got comments, so that doesn't work. Next time we'll wear a black top. Maybe I can wear something that hugs my waist with a loose shirt to cover my hips, and then somebody would say something again, and I'd be like, oh, that doesn't work. Next time, let's go for a very wide shirt that covers everything. But like, of course, it was never good enough, and it's so incredibly exhausting to live like that, and to constantly try and, like, I mean, the things I would do to avoid getting fat phobic comments, and it didn't work because I still got them. People still noticed I was fat. Like you said, when I was at a festival again, well, the same festival actually, that I went to, and I was just minding my own business, and this group of guys walked by and they said something like, my god, what's with all these fat chicks here, or something. And that's the thing, people.
It's disgusting. It's disgusting that people feel like they have the right to just
Yes, yeah,
ruin someone's fucking day and picture
because
about
it
themselves. Not picture, feeling about themselves. Like, this is just,
mhm.
I don't understand why they think they can do this.
No, because, and it does ruin your day. Well,
Yeah.
not anymore, because now I know
Yeah.
that I'm not the problem. It's them,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it does definitely ruin your day. Um, and people almost treat you like you're not human, and like your body is kind of up for everybody can comment on it, and if you didn't want that, then you shouldn't have been fat. And or something that people say is like, you have such a nice face. And you will never hear a person say that about a thin person, because then they would just say, oh, they're pretty or they're attractive or they're beautiful. But when it's a fat person, I've heard many people say it about Adele, for example, as well. Like, oh, she has such a nice face. And they're like, it's a shame her body looks like that. Almost it goes on unsaid, but it's very clear that that's what people are thinking. And then, of course, when people in the public eye are just trying to live their lives and just existing, then they get accused of promoting obesity. So yeah, it's everywhere.
And yeah, it just shows again that that is kind of still allowed to do, and it's accepted by society that fat shaming is a thing. But I need to shout out because I am, like I said, watching Vanderpump Rules. I'm still behind. I'm not up to date, so I don't know what's going to happen in the future. But at the point where I'm at right now, there's this girl Katie, and she has been called all kinds of horrible names by this one guy James about her body. And he said things like, oh, are you pregnant? Or like walked into a room and was like, oh, I see not everyone's working on their summer body. Or just like called her fat basically as well, but obviously meaning it in a horrible way. He got fired for
Oh, he did?
being bad to women, talking about women's bodies in a shit way. I mean, he's a very problematic character. There were many reasons to fire him, but once this happened, Katie went to Lisa and was like, look, I'm not tolerating working. I don't want to work at a place where this is accepted and tolerated. So either he leaves or I leave, and he got sent. And I was like, you go, girl, Lisa.
Yes.
You go.
Good. Kudos to Lisa.
Yes. Anyway, this is really an intense emotional topic. I feel really warm.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess that question I have is, sometimes people say that thin shaming, I guess that's how you can call it, is just as bad as fat shaming. How do you feel about that?
So I think, can an individual and personal attack towards a thin person be just as painful and horrible? 100%. Yes. Sometimes people are just dickheads and they say horrible things to people who have bodies that are either considered too fat, too thin, too this, too that, whatever. And that hurts, and that's painful and absolutely unacceptable. Do thin people face the same level of discrimination, prejudice, and hate? No, they don't. At the end of the day, being thin is still the standard. And even our language shows that one is still considered more acceptable. Losing weight is considered a good thing. If you ask someone, oh, have you lost weight? That's considered a compliment in most cases, have you gained weight is usually not considered a compliment. When people struggle with eating disorders, it's usually because they want to be thinner, not bigger. It's everything in society, and that's the main difference. Is like, if somebody is being mean to you on a personal level, that's a personal attack. That's not the same as an entire society and the way society is built on hating you, thinking that your body is less. You can, and I don't want to compare fat phobia to racism, but in this particular instance, I think it's like when white people say, oh, but people of color have been mean to me as well, which, I mean, it's almost funny, but there's a very big difference between a personal individual attack towards somebody or an entire system that is literally built to exclude you.
Yeah.
So also, the discrimination in the medical world is something that thin people don't have to deal with to the same degree. Doctors refusing to help people and telling them, oh, come back when you've lost weight. Every single time I've gone to a GP with, I don't know, very bad hay fever or literally anything, I always got the, oh, but if you lost weight, you wouldn't have this anymore. People see fat people as lazy, unhealthy, dirty, ugly, and that just doesn't go for thin for people who are considered too thin or whatever, to the same extent. Also in fashion, on TV, in films, the standard is still being very thin. I'm still waiting for, and diversity is like, it's getting better and better. Things like, like Netflix shows or something, they're kind of doing well. But when it comes to fat people, I'm still waiting for the day there's a pretty girl, like an Alexis Rose in a show like Schitt's Creek, who's not super thin. But that's just still not really the case anymore. And I I was with oh wait, sorry. um I was with someone on a trip once, like on holiday, and we went to this designer store, and it was like very fancy, expensive clothing, and they were very thin. You know, what society also might consider too thin. They were very thin. We went into this store together, and the guy who was working there told them, "Oh, you have the perfect body for these clothes. You look perfect. You have the perfect size for these clothes." And all I could think was, I would love to see this guy's face if I asked him, "Okay, so what do you have for me?" You know? It's
Yeah.
just, yeah, people think of fat bodies as ugly and unhealthy bodies. There was this girl I follow on Instagram, who she's Flemish as well, and she wanted to go. There was this, like, her school organized this trip, and it was like a hike of 100 kilometers in 5 days or something like that, and it was for charity, I think, if I remember correctly. And so she signed up for it with her friends and everything, and then a couple of weeks before the trip she got a letter that said, "You can't join because we're concerned that you will that you won't be able to keep up with the group." And so they had to fill out this form and write down their, like, height and weight and everything. So she had, like, mentioned she had put her weight there. And clearly that was why she got that letter that said, you can't go with us anymore because we think that, it might be too much for you or whatever. And that just shows as well that it's not about health. It's never about health. And people need to stop thinking that being fat is the same as being unhealthy. And that's the thing that's the most frustrating, is like, there can be a thin person who does drugs every weekend, who drinks themselves, I don't know, into oblivion every day, who who eats McDonald's every day, who has the most unhealthy lifestyle. If we both go to a doctor, the doctor will take one look at us and go, "You're unhealthy to me," and usually not ask questions to that other person. Like with that hike trip, if it really was about health, or about, like, oh, we want everyone to, be able to keep up with this pace and everything, then you would ask everyone how often they go for a walk, how often they exercise, what's their usual, like, how many kilometers can they walk in one day. They would, but that's not what they do. They look at you and they go, "Oh, no, you're too fat. You probably won't be able to keep up." And that's something that it's not the case for thin people to the same degree. It's not.
Yeah. I mean, it's like my favorite comment that I hear about fat phobia is when people say, "Ooh, but all the fat people are taking up our national healthcare system." And I'm like, okay, I don't have the actual insight into this. I'm going to be honest. But when I walk outside on the streets, it does not have to be a weekend, evening of a weekend or anything. When I see an ambulance, it's usually an overdose, like a drug situation, or someone who just literally drank themselves into oblivion.
No, and then also that would mean that if you would visit a hospital,
Oh, yeah.
all you would see would be fat people. And I don't think that's the case when you go to a hospital and you look at the people there. So, yeah, no. But again, it's that thought of, like, or that messed up idea of fat meaning unhealthy, or being almost used, like, interchangeably with being unhealthy.
How how did you actually like find out about fat liberation and fat phobia, and how did that change your mindset once you got into the actual, like, all the literature and just things that are out there about it?
So I know that for many people have a love-hate relationship with social media, but for me, it did a lot, actually. I think, and I can't really remember like the first thing that I saw or something that changed my mindset, but I definitely think that I definitely came across a couple of fat liberation accounts. And I remember seeing some posts that kind of planted that seed that was like, oh, the way society treats fat people is not okay, and it's okay to wear whatever you want to wear. And it used to be, it was like small things like this, and then I kind of started following these accounts, and then I kind of got more and more information. Then also I was curious, and so then I read a book called wait, let me have a look at the title. I have so many books here. Body Positive Power by Megan Jane Crabb. And that book kind of that blew my mind. That blew my mind. It was the first book I read that, or even the first time I came across something that was so like it addresses, how diet culture is just a scam, and it wants to make money, and the more people hate their bodies, the more money they make. It's about the BMI and why that is messed up, and why that's not a way to measure somebody's health. All of these things I'd never really heard before, so that book really changed my mind on so many things. And then I also have to say, I think when it comes to self love and my self love journey, Lizzo, I can't even express how much that has meant for me. Just like seeing a fat woman, and not someone who's, curvy in all the right places, and not like a woman who's fat, um, live her life and just exist. And not only live her life and do exactly what thin people would do and wear the things that thin people would wear, but then also, the songs that she has about being fat and everything, and that confidence. And I just couldn't believe that. And it honestly, listening to her albums was better than any kind of therapy for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also feel like Lizzo is proof again for that stupid misconception that fat people are lazy and unhealthy. Like, this woman shakes her ass for hours during a concert while she thinks. Like, I mean, I can't do that. I
She
can't walk and talk without being out of breath, okay?
she does the most insane choreographies, and she's still
Yeah.
blowing that flute. Like, I don't think many people who are in the comment sections like, oh my god, she's promoting obesity. Many people wouldn't be able to do that, I think. So
Exactly.
yes, it's like I said, what she has meant is, for me, is just, yeah, I'll never be able to express that. And then I think, of course, for black fat women, it must probably mean even more, because it's, my best friend is a fat black woman, and she she feel I mean, I don't want to say that that's how everyone feels, but of course, to her it was also like seeing a fat black woman live her life like that and do all these things and have fat dancers as well. Like, when do we ever see that? It's unbelievable what this woman does, and it changed my life in every single way. I also want to give a little shout out to actually the first person who was in the public eye, or no, in the music industry specifically, who was fat for me. I think that, at least that I know of, was Beth Ditto from Gossip, or The Gossip. They changed the name a couple
Yes.
times, I
Yes,
think.
yes, yes.
Her, I remember growing up, she was unapologetically fat. One of the only celebrities, I think, in that industry, who was just living her life like that and didn't seem to care. But then I was still very much, I was struggling so much that I almost looked at her with like, I got almost uncomfortable, because I used to think like, why why are you like this? Like, are you okay? Do you not realize that people like us are not supposed to be confident? Why are you like that? Like,
Mm.
um but looking back at this was during the noughties, like the abuse that this woman must have received, and
Oh,
she
yeah.
did not care, or at least she didn't show it. She lived her life, and she was just butt naked on stage doing her thing. And yeah. So So yes, that has definitely changed my mind on that as well. It has changed my life in every single possible way imaginable. It has changed the way I look at myself. It has changed how I look at other people, how I let other people treat me, my relationships, just everything. I do think my relationship with food and exercising is still a little bit, I'm still kind of looking for like the perfect way or like the perfect balance, because I think many of us are so used to ignoring the signs our bodies give us, and like we're just so used to that. Um that now, when, because I restricted myself for so long, and then when I kind of stopped dieting, then there was that thing of like, oh, now I can eat whatever I want, so I also have to eat whatever I want to kind of prove to myself and other people that I don't care anymore. And then it led to like me ordering dessert sometimes when I didn't even feel like having dessert and when I was full. And like that's not healthy either, of course, because the goal is to kind of listen to your body. So when your body tells you you're hungry, no matter what time of day it is, then eat something. If your body tells you, and also what you should eat, sometimes you're craving pizza, sometimes your body will crave some vegetables or something. So but it is very difficult after years of not being in tune with your body and actively denying its most basic need again, to now kind of trust those signals. But yeah, but then also when you're full, you should also stop eating, so that's something that I'm kind of working on now. Yeah.
You touched on this a little bit before, the term body positivity, but like in the past couple of years, the term has become more and more popular. Um, do you feel like it is helping, like creating more awareness?
I think the issue with the body positivity movement is that it was mainly created by fat women of color, because fat people die as a result of fat phobia. Like I said, the way they're treated, the way we're treated in the medical world by doctors, how our mental health sometimes suffers from all of this. And what we see now is kind of that people who are not, who are, usually white women, and then also usually thin women, or like, I don't like to use this term, but like mid-size, are taking this movement. And so what we see now is that women who are a size, I don't know, 8, but have some cellulite or have some, a stomach or something, are using this term. And whilst I absolutely 100% believe that everyone struggles with diet culture and with these impossible beauty standards, it is kind of taking away the attention from the people who this was actually created for and who need this movement the most, because then it leads to brands who are like, oh my God, look at how body positive we are. Our clothes go up to a size XL. And then fat people, and specifically fat people of color, for them, nothing is really changing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a good movement, and it was created with the best intentions and great intentions, but I kind of, yeah, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it, I think.
Yeah, I feel like they're also kind of different, and you might not agree with me. I don't know, but like I feel like with the term body positivity, what I, from my experience, feel with this term is, and that's because I haven't read the books. That's just the body positivity term description that I got from my kind of social media is you just need to love your body. And I think, yes, you should be happy with yourself, embrace your body, whatever. But I'm also like, you don't always have to love your body, because it's just, for me, in my head, it's normal to have days where like, I'm just not happy today, and that is fine as well. I feel like this forced positivity sometimes can have the opposite effect as well.
Yes, yeah, 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 definitely. And when some people are trying to heal, or when some people are trying to exactly get to a better place with their bodies, there can be that pressure of like, oh no, you need to think you're the best fucking thing that's ever happened. So like not everyone feels that way all the time, or some people don't feel that way, and that's fine as well. I think, yes, and that's also why people also talk about body neutrality and just looking at your body as like, this is my body and it's keeping me alive and it's doing these things for me, and my stomach lets me get the nutrition I need, and my arms let me hug the people I love, and like my body is doing these incredible things for me. And if nothing else, just try to be grateful for that, I think is maybe a good way to, or a good place to start.
Yeah, agreed. It's your home. Keep it
Yes.
happy.
And you need to spend a long time with it. So yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I guess my other question would be, do you think that people are starting to see diet culture for what it is?
I would say to some degree, but also the diet industry is smart and nothing if not incredibly adaptable. So I feel like these diet companies, they're just rebranding all the time, and so maybe their slogans are not like "stop being fat and ugly, take these pills" anymore. They will now rebrand to something like, it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle change. And you can kind of ask yourself, if you need to stress the fact that you're not a diet 5 times in one single ad, you're probably a diet. You're probably a diet.
Also,
Yeah.
I know we're not going to name it, but I know the app you're regarding to, and it makes you weigh yourself every day. But it's telling people it's not a diet. Well, I'm
Oh.
like, how is that healthy if I have to weigh myself every day?
I think I was about to name it.
Oh, I mean, I guess you can. I don't
Do you
know.
mean, does it have 2 letters or 4?
It has 4.
Okay, yeah. Well, so anyway, in general, first of all, diets are scams, okay? In case anyone still needs to hear this, diets are scams. Those industries take advantage of people, specifically women, hating their bodies. And the more we hate our bodies, the more money they make. Also, everything that is about restricting your diet, weighing yourself, calling food bad or good, having this idea of like, oh, this is guilty food, or like, this is something that I should feel bad about, this is something I feel, this is good food, this is bad food. Everything that has rules about how much you can eat, when you can eat, it's all the same thing, because then there's these like, what's it called, the fasting, intermittent fasting thing. Same thing. At the end of the day, you're still telling your body, oh, I can't eat from this time till this time. No. And then there is, the Noom adverts telling people, because people actually are falling for this. And I can't blame them. I can't fucking blame them, because they're everywhere. But people tell me, I actually have people tell me like, oh no, but I did this for a while and it just focuses on eating healthier, and it doesn't really focus on weight. And then you spend 1 minute on their website and you see it's very much about losing weight. But then, and then there's also the ones that are not even subtle about it. And where I'm kind of at this point, like, what are people like, people who do this? And again, I can see why you would feel like you need to, because there is that the diet culture, the idea that you need to be thin, and the thinner the better. But things like those Ozempic injections, you haven't heard of them? Oh, you're shaking your head because you're desperate.
Because it's disgusting. I've heard of it, obviously, because one of my favorite Real Housewives has been accused of using them. She says she doesn't, which I kind of believe, because I don't think she has a healthy relationship with working out and anything, but I don't think she is taking them, just because I don't want to believe it. But yeah, that's why I heard about it. And I've seen adverts. I think there have been some, I don't know, was it Alex Light who posted like images and videos of like adverts for people to actually go and take them to lose weight?
Yes, yeah. They're being recommended by doctors. So again, I can't even blame people for doing it if your GP is literally recommending them to you. There's also these balloons that I saw adverts for on the tube. So you basically get like a balloon inserted into your stomach, and it will, of course, make you feel like less hungry or whatever. It will take that feeling away. That again is how is that natural? I'm sorry, how is that normal? Think of one kind of, at the end of the day, we're still animals. Think of one species who would do something like this. People like, every kind of creature on this planet eats when it's hungry. What are we doing, putting fucking balloons in our bodies? that will tell us, oh, yeah, you're hungry, you're starving actually, but no, let's just pretend that's not the case. And then also with these injections, first of all, these are not meant for people who are not diabetic. Okay, these are meant specifically for diabetic people, or for people who are diabetic, and there's a shortage. These people can't get their meds anymore because of this absolute madness. And then also my main question with these kinds of things, like with the balloon, like with whatever, what's the goal here? Because let's say you do this for a bit, and yeah, you will probably lose weight. You will. And then what? Are you planning on doing that for the rest of your life? I mean, what's the idea here? Are you planning on injecting this into your body for the rest of your life? Luckily, your life probably won't be very long if you do this. I mean, like what are people? What is the long term goal? Because if you stop this, 9 out of 10, you will probably gain the weight back, which is also the case, by the way, for every single diet. 95%.
I was just gonna say.
Yeah, and we do have these statistics, and we do know that 95% of diets fail. And that's because they're designed to fail. Because if there was one diet that was successful, everyone would be doing it. And yeah, when I was in Belgium last week, there was like a more a distant family member who I was having a conversation with, and she she told me like a very casual way that she was using these injections, and there were people there who were like, "What is that?" And she was like, "Oh yeah, it's the one that's used, that actually it's meant for people with diabetes." Yes, exactly. So what the hell are you doing?
What is it actually doing though? Does it make you just not hungry? Like, how does this work when you get
I
it?
have no idea. I've actually no idea.
Mm.
I don't want to give any false information. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't want to look into it. I do know that it can cause organ failure, but apparently people don't really care about that.
As long as you're not fat, it's okay if your organs
Oh
fail.
yes. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Apparently. um. Well, talking about losing weight, would you say you can be body positive but still want to lose weight or change your body in a healthy way? I'm not talking about these
Yeah.
injections or anything weird.
Okay, this is a difficult one for me, and I don't know if I'm the right person to say to answer this. And I'm not sure I do have the answer to this. I think we often, when I think, first of all, I 100% understand why somebody would want to lose weight, of course. um I do kind of wonder sometimes when people lose weight and they say, they're talking about like how much better they feel. There is always that thing in my mind that's like, do you feel better because you feel better, or do you feel better because the world treats you better? And of course, that can also have to do with my own experience with this. But the thing is, of course, it can be that you're living a healthier lifestyle, and that you lost weight because you started working out, because you started exercising, because you were eating very in a very unhealthy way. Because I said we shouldn't you put food into categories of like good or bad, and I mean by that, like, if you're having a pizza, you shouldn't feel guilty about it, you shouldn't pay for it the next day, you shouldn't, like, no, you can just have the pizza because you're eating because you want the pizza. Of course, nobody's saying that it's not important to have like a healthy and balanced diet. But yeah, diet, it's weird in the UK because diet, like dieting, kind of, it's the same word. um but yeah, your eating patterns or whatever should, of course, well, not should, like, I'm not telling anyone what to do, but yeah, ideally, and also I'm not there myself yet, but yeah, you should probably aim towards like a balanced, having different food groups, eating, yeah, a mix of different things. Anyway.
It's all about balance. And I
Yes.
mean, I'm just gonna go quickly into like losing weight and weight, because what I did recently is I weighed myself because um I haven't weighed myself in a very long time, and the reason I weighed myself is because I heard from a few people, have you lost weight? And I am a hypochondriac, okay? I This is TMI. I had a weird rash. I was like, oh my god, do I have some weird illness? Anyway, I have weighed myself, and I weigh the most I've ever weighed in my entire life. Which also, I know why people probably have said it to me, because I have had a yoga studio nearby that I have been going to religiously. Like, I have been going at least 3-4 times a week, and it's my body has never done intense muscle workouts like this ever. So what I think people mean is my shape has changed, but
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
actually weigh the most I have ever weighed. And that's another thing. When people ask people, how have you lost weight? It's like, it can scare me. Like, people like me are getting scared by that. I don't like that. Because I never actually try to lose weight. I just eat what I eat. I don't categorize food into bad and good. If I have a pizza today and a burger tomorrow, then that's how it is. And my body naturally will then maybe go towards, let's have something more like fresh with vegetables the
Yes.
next day.
Yeah,
Like, I
definitely.
literally just listen to what my body wants. I try to eat in a certain way because I have this obsession of, if I eat a certain way, I will get to 100 years because my cells become Jane Fonda. Um, but like, yeah, that's the other thing I also wanted to say about weight loss. Like, you can, like, it has, how much you weigh doesn't say how healthy you are. You can be there's this video that I've watched from a woman I used to do workouts with, where she put 10 different women in a room. They all had the same BMI. They all looked completely different. Like, one of them was such a muscle woman. No one would have said your BMI is unhealthy, but it was. She was, according to BMI, she was overweight. Like,
Yeah. According
the
to
whole
my
weight
BMI,
thing.
I should have been dead a long time ago. um. Yeah. Sorry. Go on.
No, I'm just saying, you could even be like, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. All I want to say is, weight is really confusing, and I don't think it should be measured in anything. Like, you
No.
shouldn't measure your health or anything regarding to your weight, because, yeah.
No, but that's so good what you're saying because, yeah, like you said, your BMI is probably the highest it's ever
Oh,
been
my
as well.
BMI, I'm overweight according to my BMI as well, but and I'm weighing the most I've ever weighed, but I've never felt as strong and fit as I do now. I've never felt this
Uh-huh.
fit.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
So,
exactly. Exactly. I don't think I've ever felt healthier either, and I'm definitely the heaviest I've ever been. And I actually, it's interesting, but sometimes I run into people, well, not anymore because I live here now, but when I do run into people that I haven't seen in a while, and then they're like, "Oh my God, you look incredible. Have you lost weight?" And I'm like, "No, I've never been more fat. Like, this is the heaviest I've ever been." What you're seeing is confidence. I'm happy, I'm confident, which means I look good. And but of course to people it's like, "Oh, she looks really good and she looks really happy. That must mean she's lost weight." And that's just not the case, you know? And yeah, like we said, it can be that you're living a healthier lifestyle, but you could also do that and not lose weight. But the thing is with weight loss that I kind of struggle with is that the focus is often on weight and the two are almost always used interchangeably. So like when people are talking about how they lost weight, no, how they're so much healthier and happier, then it will always kind of come down to, or then they will post these before and after pictures on their Instagram and then it's kind of like, okay, but how much of this actually has to do with like your lifestyle and how much has to do with the fact that you've lost weight. I don't know, it's difficult, but it's so also like the whole um exercising culture is so intertwined with diet culture as well. They're basically like sisters, which is why I also kind of struggle with exercising as well because like I've thought of joining a gym a couple of times and I honestly feel like, oh, but if I start working out or using one of those things like tool devices or whatever, then they will probably tell me, like the calories that I've burned, and like, will that trigger me or will that make me feel like, oh, so now
oh,
if
I
I
can tell you they're not accurate. If you go on like a treadmill and it tells me the same amount of calories burnt that it would tell my boyfriend, who's a male, taller than me and weighs more. Like, it
yeah.
doesn't make it's absolutely not accurate. And then also about the whole, like, I'm really much like, I'm really sad because my yoga studio actually closed down. But the reason I got so into it was the first time I wasn't doing these exercises to actually change how I look in any way. It was because it was such a nice vibe and community, and it was simply just about getting stronger. And I really wanted to get stronger. And I am stronger now than I was 5 months ago when I joined. And it's just nice to focus on that. And like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm able to do so and so many push-ups now. And I couldn't do this before. And I wasn't focusing on losing weight or whatever. I was
Yeah.
literally just enjoying being there and the whole vibe around. And it wasn't just a strength thing. It was just a mental thing of being around these nice teachers who don't just talk about the exercise itself. It has a big mental aspect to it. And it was, yeah, unfortunately closed, but I'm looking for something else now.
Oh, okay.
And I don't want to go back to the gym. That's the thing, because people in gyms sometimes, and I mean, a lot of people will hate me now, but some people in the gym are just like, they're doing 3, I don't know, press ups or whatever, and then they go to the mirror and look at the muscle, and I'm like, oh, just you annoy me so much. I mean, yeah, I am thinking of joining a gym just because I don't have a yoga studio nearby anymore. And maybe if I have a personal trainer and I tell them exactly what I want to do strength wise, it will feel different. But we'll see.
Yeah.
Sorry, we completely went off track. Let's get back to the episode.
Yes, okay.
Okay, I do have another question. 2 more, actually. One of them is, how can people be an ally? How can people be supportive? Because I myself am in situations sometimes where I'm like, I do not agree with what you're saying, but I don't really know what I'm meant to do here.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay, I think the first thing that I kind of would like people to realize is that fat people have to think about things that are not even a thing for you. You know, like for example, the amount of times I've gone shopping with people and we go to this really nice boutique and they're like trying on all these clothes and they're like, "Oh, why are you not trying on anything?" And I'm like, "Because these sizes go up to a 14. I'm a size 22. Like, what are you? I'm not sure what you're expecting from me." And then they're like, "Oh no, that can't be. Surely there must be something for you here." And there isn't, and it's just something that people don't really think about. It can be something like, this is, a random very random thing, but when, for example, you're doing something like, let's say, a team building thing, and you go paintballing or scuba diving or something, and you need to wear a wetsuit or you need to wear some kind of specific suit that they give you, that's a thing where I'm like, in advance, look, like, googling or going to that organization's website to like see, okay, do you need to wear a suit? What's the biggest size? Will I fit in them? Like, those are things that thin people don't need to think about. Also, recently, we at work, we had this clothing swap thing where it was like everyone can just bring in clothes and then you can take whatever you like. And I mean, it's obviously, it's fine. Nobody, like, it's not meant in a bad way, but when these things happen, it's just something where I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's clearly not for me. Of course, like, I can't really participate in this because, yeah, I think there's, like, I don't know, not that many people my size at work. So it's just those things, and it's okay for me now. I'm okay with these things, but yeah, I would say just realize that. Same thing with, like, something that keeps coming back and back every time is like, plane, like, seats on a plane and the seat belts. It happened to me once on a Ryanair flight that they save on everything, it turns out, because that belt was so short and I couldn't close it. And literally pretended it was closed, and I put my jacket on top of it or something, and I just didn't say anything. Now I would say something, I would speak up, but many people are too embarrassed to do that and to say something. And so it's just those kinds of things. Just have a little bit of empathy for that, I think. Realize that people have experiences. I mean, when it comes to any kind of, minority, to use that that word, but realize that people have experiences that you don't have or that you don't even think about. Also, a big one I would say is, don't make excuses for fat people. What I mean by that is, sometimes when people want to, like, stand up for fat people, they will say something like, or they will defend us to other people by saying something like, "Oh, but maybe they have a health issue and maybe they can't lose weight,
Yeah.
or maybe they struggle with that." Fat people don't owe anybody a healthy lifestyle. Just like thin people are not always healthy, but nobody says anything and nobody questions anything. If a fat person is fat because they go to McDonald's 3 times a day, they still deserve to be treated with the same amount of respect as thin people or as fat people who do eat, have a healthy lifestyle or whatever. So yeah, stop making excuses. Stop trying to like explain why a person might be fat because it's none of your business and nobody owes you anything.
Yeah, I agree.
And then, sorry, I had to cough. Um, Also, another thing, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, but sometimes people to make people feel better, people say something like, "Oh, nobody's looking at you that way. It's all in your head. Like, this is just your insecurities. Nobody, no, people do look at you." And I really wish I could say that was not the case, but people do look at you. I've been yelled at by strangers that I was a fat whale. Okay, people yelled at me. I was just riding my bike or whatever. People yelled at me. People do look at you and comment on your body. People do look at you and comment on your body when you go to the beach or something. I really wish that wasn't the case, but pretending that that's not a thing isn't helping anyone, like you said, at the gym as well. Sometimes people will, when fat people go to the gym, people will film them and put them on social media. These things,
What?
yeah, these things happen. People are horrible sometimes. And pretending that, like, oh no, this is all in your heads, that's not helping anyone. Like, no, people are terrible sometimes, and people absolutely 100% do these things. So that as well. Then, of course, and we've mentioned it, but I can't believe we still need to say this in the year of our Lord 2023, but stop commenting on people's weight. Stop it. Stop it. Stop asking people if they've lost weight. Stop saying, oh, you look good. Have you lost weight? Stop any of that. You don't know what somebody's going through. You don't know why somebody may have gained or lost weight. Somebody may have lost weight because they're sick, because they're depressed, because they're feeling bad, because they're going through something. Do not, just don't. It shouldn't be that difficult to talk about something else, to not comment on it. And also, it's not just, if you don't even care about fat people, do it for other people, because you don't know who's struggling in that moment when you made that comment. Who might hear it when you say, "Oh, I'm not eating bananas anymore because they make you fat," or whatever. You don't know who's hearing this and is maybe going through something, and it might trigger something within them. So just don't do it. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, that is good to know. I will take this to heart. And I hope everyone who heard that as well. And then finally, I wanted to ask, what would you say to people who are still struggling with fat phobia and diet culture?
I would say, first of all, the problem is not you. And I don't know if maybe you haven't heard that before, or you don't, or you need a reminder, or you know that, but still it doesn't hurt to say it again. There is nothing wrong with you. You deserve to live your best life at your current size in the body that you reside in. It doesn't matter what that looks like. Don't do things because you feel like you'll do them when you're thin, or you'll do them when you've lost weight. I used to do that so much. I used to put things off and like, oh, but when I'm thin, my life will start. No, your life is already happening. Enjoy it. Um, don't keep clothes that are too small. Go out, wear that bikini, date, do whatever you want, and know that it's not you. And I know it's difficult. I know it's incredibly hard. I honestly still feel I feel a lot of resentment towards like people who have said things to me and towards society as a whole for making me feel all that way all those years, because yeah, I wasted quite a bit of time feeling horrible, and I never deserved that, and no fat person ever deserves that. And it's difficult because I don't want to blame the people who did these things or said these things, because we all know that it's just so easy to get to be in that mindset and to think these things, but we never deserved any of that. um I'm honestly at my heaviest and happiest I've ever been. I've done things I never ever thought were possible. I didn't go swimming for years and years and years, and I used to tell people I hated swimming. I love swimming. I love swimming. I love whether it's like the sea, a swimming pool. I love it. But I would wear my clothes on the beach. I would go there and literally be in like trousers or a long dress or something. Last summer, we went to Bali together and I went swimming in this gorgeous but incredibly impractical bathing suit. And it had it had a massive cleavage. And I was flashing half the people there for the entirety of that afternoon. But I did not think about it for 1 second, and it would have been fine if I still would have been a little bit nervous or insecure. But I was kind of, before that moment, like the days leading up to that, I was kind of like, oh, will I still, I've come so far now, but will I still be insecure in that moment? Or will I feel, I didn't think about it for 1 second. I was living my best life. I had some pictures taken.
You were posing on a big rock in your
posing.
bathing suit, looking like the queen of the jungle.
I had to climb on that rock, and then again, I kind of slide down, and
Well, no one looked gracious on
no,
that rock
absolutely
getting
not.
up.
But even then, I didn't care. So
No.
I guess what I'm trying to say is it's possible. It is absolutely possible if you feel like, oh, I'll never get there. I'll never feel that confident. It is so possible. If I can do it, literally everyone can do it. I went from overthinking everything every second of the day, the way I dressed, the way I looked, the way I did my makeup so that I would look as slim as possible. It is possible. And then also something I want to say, and many fat people, or like fat liberation accounts or fat people in the public eye, say that they don't want to be called brave for living their lives and for doing what other people are doing. I kind of disagree with that. I want to say we are brave. If you're a fat person and you're living your life in your fat body, that everybody, that still people want to make you slimmer, people are constantly telling you that you shouldn't be that size, we are brave. I think we're fucking brave to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Amen to that. Well, they were all my questions. Sorry. Those were all my questions. I just want to say, I think it's really impressive that you just open up about all of this and are willing to put yourself... Oh, sorry. Almost smashed my Prosecco glass. That you're willing to put yourself out there. And honestly, I can only imagine that this will help so many people who struggle to just hear... Simply just to hear that it's not them that are the problem.
Well,
thank you, Gladys.
Oh.
It was really nice having this conversation.
It was really nice. Thank you for making me so comfortable. And yeah, I hope so. That's literally just all I could ask for. If even one person hears this and it kind of can plant a seed in their in their minds or whatever, then or they can go out and have their legs out or their arms out, then that's literally everything I could ever want. I do have some books to recommend real quick as well.
Yes, let's move on to the recommendation section. I actually have a episode of something to recommend
as
well.
Good. Okay. I'm very curious to hear what that is. So the book I mentioned earlier as well, Fearing the Black Body, The Racial Origins of Fat Phobia by Sabrina Strings. Very interesting about, how, like we said, fat phobia is rooted in racism. Then there is Happy Fat, Taking Up Space in a World That Wants to Shrink You by Sophie Hagen. I love that one as well. Then there's also by Aubrey Gordon, What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fats. Also very interesting. I love that one as well. Will we be putting these in the show notes, by the way?
Maybe we should just have an Instagram post.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good. That's smart. Okay. And then the last one I have two. Where's the other one? There is also the one I mentioned earlier by Megan Jane Crabb, Body Positive Power, which really changed my life in a way, at the risk of sounding very dramatic, but it really changed my mind completely. And then also by Stephanie Yeboah, also one of my favorite Instagram accounts. So definitely follow her. Fattily Ever After. Is that not the best way to end this?
I love this title. Oh, no. We definitely will share those. I think that is worth a post.
Okay, let's hear yours.
Well, Mine is an episode from a series. I talked to you about it, I think. Just not about this. I'm just going to name it. It's called I Am. It's a British series, and some people might have heard about it. There was this one episode. So the episodes don't link together. Each episode is about one specific topic. Sounds like our podcast intro. No. And the episode I'm regarding to is the one with Kate Winslet and her daughter. It is called I Am Ruth.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I think it's channel 4. And it's just really touching. It's about this girl who is actually Kate Winslet's daughter. She's playing her. They play mother and daughter in the episode. And she intensely struggles with today's social media and the body goals and whatever. And it's just about how the mom also just doesn't know how to handle it, and it leads to hurting herself and all kinds of bad things. But it's beautifully made, and I think it shows, like, we grew up with magazines, okay, magazines and MTV videos and all that kind of stuff. But imagine growing up right now with like social media on your phone all the time, seeing everything all the time, having the feeling you're 12 and you need to look like a 25-year-old woman. Like, I can't even
Yeah.
imagine.
Definitely.
I mean, we struggle with it. Our generation struggles with it. So how should the underdeveloped brain of a 14-year-old feel when seeing that?
Yes, and it's something that you addressed earlier as well, was like, for example, that K-pop thing, that beauty that beauty ideal that you need to look as young as possible, and again, as thin as possible. And people do, because sometimes I kind of feel like, because of the content I'm consuming now and because of the books I read and the accounts I follow, I almost sometimes kind of I sometimes feel like, or I sometimes assume that everyone knows these things, and that like
Oh yeah, it's a bubble.
yeah, it
It's
is
a
a
bubble that we
bubble,
live in.
definitely. But then when I realized that, oh no, many young people are actually following very different accounts and looking at very different people, and thinking that they need to look like them. So yeah,
But
definitely.
I think that is a good tip for people who do struggle, but kind of, everyone in a way hates social media, but everyone kind of is using social media. And I think the one thing that you and I both probably would suggest people to do is curate your social media. Only follow what makes you feel good or gives you valuable, useful information. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And also, like, if you feel like, if you're hearing these things and you're like, oh, I have no idea where to start or whatever, you don't have to, spend hours and hours reading these books or whatever. It can literally, a great start can literally be following a couple of social media accounts. Because that's how I started as well, by just
Yeah.
seeing these posts here and there. Because yeah, like I said, for me, social media has really helped, but it really depends on how you use it. It can make all the difference.
100%. Whew. Well, that was an intense episode, but I loved it.
I really liked it as well. Thank you to everyone who is still listening. So before we wrap up, we want to say a big thank you to all of you who made it to the end of the episode. We hope you enjoyed it, and maybe you heard something you could relate to. Also, remember, the journey doesn't end here. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. This time, like we said, Isabella will give us a bit more insight into her experience, and I will be asking her questions.
Yes. But here is the best part. We also want to hear from you. We know that every one of you has their own unique experiences and stories to share. So again, don't be shy. Feel free to connect with us on our Instagram. It's called We Are Millennial Musings. And yeah, share your own musings, funny moments, or even the not so glorious times of being a millennial or from any other generation, because we do not discriminate.
No, so until next week, stay curious and keep those stories coming.
Bye.
Bye.